So yeah, regarding this source that Donnie brought to us the other day with that spreadsheet talking about the Tuyu, all these people Amenhotep with Sub-Saharan Africans, this spreadsheet, what it's trying to do is figure out is the ethnic background of ancient Egyptian mummies like Tutankhamun, and Amenhotep III using this DNA data. So it uses a tool called PopAffiliator to say things like 93% Sub-Saharan African or 41% Eurasian. But here's the issue. This approach is actually fundamentally flawed, and this is not conjecture. So first, PopAffiliator, it isn't meant for ancient DNA. It was designed to work with modern DNA in forensic cases. So applying it to 3,000-year-old mummies, it doesn't make any sense scientifically. Second, the DNA markers they use, called STRs, are great for identifying individuals like at a crime scene, but they're terrible for ancestry analysis. So you need different types of markers like SNPs from the whole genome to make a meaningful ancestry claim. So also, they're comparing the ancient mummies to a modern population data. People have moved and mixed a lot over thousands of years. Comparing ancient Egyptians to today's populations gives a very skewed picture. So another big problem is how they interpret the numbers, right? So just because PopAffiliator says 93% Sub-Saharan African does not mean that the person was 93% African. It's more like based on a limited modern database. This is the most likely match, right? It's not a definitive genetic claim or proof or even a label, right? And lastly, they cite some legitimate academic papers, but those papers don't actually support their conclusions. One of the main ones, the Hawass et al. 2010, explicitly avoided saying anything about ethnicity. So bottom line, they're using the wrong tool, the wrong data, and drawing conclusions that aren't supported by real population genetics or even academic literature. If you're genuinely interested in ancient DNA ancestry studies, there are much better peer-reviewed methods like using whole genome sequences and statistical modeling. This just isn't one of them. So yeah, Donnie, this ain't even really about you. This is more for the John Gordine and all them boys. But pretty much the short tandem repeats of STRs, what he's referring to. These are short sequences of DNA that repeat a certain number of times. For example, one person may have a sequence of AGAT, GAT, GT, whatever, right? And another may have AGT, GT. You know, hopefully those weren't the same, but that difference can help identify individuals, right? So STRs are used for forensic and paternity tests, like a kind of DNA fingerprint. They're fast mutating, they're highly variable, and they're great for matching individuals, but not for tracing ancient ancestry over 1,000 years. So why STRs are not good for ancestry or ethnic group identification is too few markers, right? These studies use only 15 STRs, which is way too small to infer ancestry. Real ancestry, if y'all don't know, holler at my ancestry people, my DNA people. It uses hundreds of thousands of SNPs, singular nucleotide polymorphisms across the genome, right? No deep time resolution. These STRs mutate very quickly, so they don't preserve any signals over thousands of years. They're fine for figuring out like who someone's dad is, but not where their ancestors come from 1500 BC. So there's not even ancestral information. They don't reflect ancient populations. STR structure or any migration history for that matter, they're chosen for variability, right? Not geographical meaning. So what? Even when they say in this shit, the SSA DNA, they usually mean genetic variants commonly found in populations from Sub-Saharan Africa today, but this is the problem with that. The populations move and mix over time. Ancient Egyptians might not resemble today's North or Sub-Saharan Africans. So saying SSA DNA, that's very vague and honestly biologically oversimplified. Africa has the most genetic diversity in the world. Lumping everyone below the Sahara into one group is scientifically fallacious. So there's no such thing as a single well-defined Sub-Saharan African DNA. So once again, PopAffiliator does not work here. It's an online tool that predicts a person's broad geographic origins, Sub-Saharan African, Eurasian, Asia, based on the STRs, but it was made for model samples, not ancient DNA. Ancient DNA has damage, missing regions, and post-mortem changes. PopAffiliator was trained on a modern databases, so it's not accurate for these ancient genomes. It assumes today's populations equals past population, and that's a huge problem. For example, today's Egyptians don't genetically match 3,000-year-old Egyptians. PopAffiliator does not account for that. It outputs classifications not percentage ancestry. So if it says 93% Sub-Saharan African, it's not saying the mummy is 93% genetically African. It means the tool thinks that the STR profile resembles a modern Sub-Saharan African individual, and that's not the same as real ancestry. Let me think of an analogy. So think of STRs as a street name in the neighborhood, and the SNPs as a full GPS coordinates, right? STRs can tell you who lives at what address now, right, in forensics. But if you want to know the whole city that evolved over 3,000 years, you need a full map, and that's what SNPs do, right? That's why you don't hear anybody who's doing their ancestry, any DNA test, reference STRs. You know what I'm saying? So trying to map ancient migration using STRs is like trying to predict Roman Empire migration routes based on today's Uber ride tools. You know what I'm saying? It's the wrong method, right? So what should we using instead? That's the question y'all should be asking. We should be using genome-wide SNP data, right? Ancient DNA sequencing, right? Modern day to like bruh, this dude used to try to compare. But like I say, this is obviously what it is. And I told you I was gonna pop your top, and I ain't gonna do nothing too much fancy on this. If you know, you know. This is for those who know. Like I said, I'm gonna tag this to the gang and them, so they be over edified on this shit now. Now niggas can never ever bring up this study again.